In this video, I want to talk about how art school completely destroyed my relationship with art and what I am doing now to rebuild that relationship again. So let's take it all the way back to me as a little child. I was always drawing. For like every birthday and Christmas, I was the kid who would get those like huge art boxes with like the oil pastels and the paints and the colored pencils and like all of this stuff because I just loved it. My elementary school art teacher was actually my favorite art teacher I've ever had, and that goes all the way through college. She was still my favorite. I actually sent her an email about that a few years ago, and her response was very, very cute. But anyways, yeah, whenever I was in elementary school, she was very encouraging and like following your own voice, doing whatever you want to do, even though we had those like little assignments or whatever. Middle school was pretty similar, but not nearly as fun. And then high school, I actually wasn't in art at all until senior year because I was in band, and there just like wasn't enough time in my schedule or something to be able to do band and art until I quit band for senior year. So I could take AP art to go to college with some amount of credit for that for whatever reason. So anyways, I show up at art school, and the only ways my parents even let me do this is because I agreed to do something that was commercially viable. So I did graphic design instead of studio art, like painting or something like that. I managed to get into the graphic design program on the first try, which was apparently not normal, but I did it anyway and was in graphic design for about 2 years until the teacher asked me to not worry about going through the next round of portfolio reviews to move on to the next level of that program. I did speak on that in my video about people don't know what you're capable of if you want to hear more about that. But once I left the graphic design program, I went into printmaking, and the entire time I was there, I was being told that I should change my style, specifically by one of the teachers. She was like an abstract artist and really, I don't know if she didn't like figurative work or whatever, which is what I was doing. She was very much trying to get me to move into work that I wasn't interested in doing. And that wasn't the first time I had experienced that actually at the same school. For some reason, a lot of the teachers were very abstract leaning, and while I was in the graphic design program, you had to take the basic art classes, so like drawing 1 and 2, painting 1 and 2. There was like a watercolor class. I can't remember all of them now, but I remember a lot of them like trying to sway students in a specific way. But more than anything, every single thing, every single brushstroke, every single line, every single color that you choose had to be fought for. You had to tell them exactly why it was chosen, and it became this game of just conceptualizing everything and explaining everything. And if you didn't have a good explanation for it, then you got bad grades, or you were frowned upon as not being like a real artist for having a reason why you did something. It was not about expression, following a calling. It wasn't even about skills. I don't even remember being in an art class where they were actually teaching specific skills. Like, there were some techniques, like, I remember the first thing that's coming to mind is like in the watercolor class, they would teach you like wet on dry, wet on wet. Or in printmaking, obviously that is a whole thing in and of itself, and you do need to learn the process, especially for something as complicated as lithography, where you're drawing on a piece of limestone, etching it, with gum arabic and nitric acid, and then mixing ink, rolling it on top, and then putting it through a press. Like, it's very procedural. But even in that kind of class, there was this heavy, heavy emphasis on concepts and explaining everything away. And to some extent, I do understand that. However, it really just hurt the relationship I had built with the art itself. Like, whenever I was little, I used art as an escape. When there were arguments in my house, which was not infrequent, I would go hide in my room and draw for like 6 hours. And I would come out with this like finished piece, and I didn't even remember what was going on before I went in that room. It was just like an escape for me. Like, honestly, now I realize that I was regulating my nervous system without even realizing it. It was just a natural thing that I did as a kid. And so I got really uh, not like amazing artist or anything, but I got good at it because I had to spend so much time doing that to regulate myself. And so that's when I started getting attention for it. And I think that's where the whole trajectory of like wanting to be an artist kind of started. But anyways, by this time that I was in college, it was just everything had to be explained away. I couldn't do things just because I wanted to or it felt good. It was like all intellectualized and turned into this thing that was the total opposite of why I got interested in art to begin with. And so after I graduated, I was still very interested in becoming an artist, and I actually pursued more printmaking, lithography, and woodcuts specifically. I had to go to community college for this because even if I could have afforded a press at the time, it would not have fit in the apartments I was living in, and it wouldn't have been safe to have those types of chemicals in my house anyway. But it was the first time that I kind of didn't have to explain myself anymore and could just enjoy the process. But by that time, I was just hyper intellectualizing every single thing that I did, every color that I chose, every layer in the print had to like be meaningful or done a certain way, and it was just like not fun anymore. So the fact that I had to drive, 30, 40 minutes to go to this place to do something that wasn't even as exciting as it was before was, I don't know, it just kind of like it just wasn't going to work out. So I eventually kind of closed that business and moved on to other types of businesses because I just like, I hate working for people. That's a story for another day, but I always knew I was going to do my own thing. So I tried to keep art alive. Even when we moved from Texas to Colorado, I found a place here that had a print shop and did that for a little bit, but then COVID happened and that was awkward. And anyways, like eventually I just kind of stopped making art, and I always had this like shame and guilt because I had this identity of being an artist, and not doing art means I'm not an artist or I'm a fake artist. So plus you add in the fact that I'm not making money for it, which was its own like mental hurdle of being a real artist and everything. It was just like a not great place to be. So I remember one day I decided I was going to go through all my prints, and I just destroyed like a huge amount of them. I just tore them all apart and threw them away. And it turns out that that is not abnormal for people to do, not with prints specifically, just art as a whole. I remember coming across a David Hockney quote about that. But anyways, I eventually decided that art wasn't fun anymore and I just needed to let it go. So I had a literal memorial for shutting down my art website. Like, there's a picture of me with my art site in the background the day that I took it offline, and it was very emotional. But I was moving on, getting serious, like all this stuff, and that stayed that way for a very long time. I wasn't even drawing, I wasn't painting, I wasn't doing anything. But in the past year or so, my creativity has been kind of like bubbling to the surface again. And it started with writing because that felt like the most accessible thing to do. And then I started thinking about, printing again. So I put in an application to go to the Tamarind Institute, which is a lithography, or they have a lithography workshop in New Mexico, but I wasn't accepted into that, which is fine. And then after that, I was like, why don't we just take this all the way back to basics? Let's just start painting again. Like, this doesn't have to be so serious. It doesn't have to be the thing that I got a degree in or whatever. This like ability to regulate myself. Like, I just wanted to feel that again, to be able to like turn off my brain and listen to music and paint, or listen to a podcast and paint or whatever. And so I actually signed up for this painter I really like. His name is Christian Rex Van Minnen, and he's an oil painter, and turns out he has a Patreon, so I signed up for that, and now I'm learning these like old master ways of doing oil painting, not so it can turn into something though, and not so I can explain everything that I'm doing to someone who's like, why did you choose that color, blah blah blah, but just so I can get back in touch with that. And so I actually have there's a couple exercises that we're working on for that, and this is the first one I did. This is just the grayscale version of an apple. I'll add color to this eventually, but and I'm working on an artichoke right now, but just like, again, taking it all the way back to basics and just like trying to enjoy the process, not to get a grade, not to make it a business, but just because I like doing it, and to validate myself doing it alone, not to rely on external validation to know that I'm a real artist. And like, honestly, these videos are part of this too. It's just expression as a whole is something that I have been putting off for years and years. But to kind of wrap this up, everyone has a different definition of art, and I'm not saying that mine is right, but for me specifically, it has always been about expressing myself. It's always been about like coming inward and reconnecting with this thing inside of me that brings peace and enjoyment and has satisfaction in just like bringing something into the world. And art school took that away from me. And now I am actively trying to get it back. And I'm not stuck on one medium. It's like writing, videos, painting, drawing. All of those things are good, and I'm not taking anything off the table. It's just however it wants to come out is going to come out. And my hope is that, someone out there is going to maybe hear this and remember how good it felt to just make something for you, not for anyone else, and get back to that. It doesn't have to be something crazy. It can just be doodling. Like, one of the things I always go back to when I draw, just like mindlessly, is like lighters and mushrooms and worms. So none of that is serious, but it doesn't have to be serious. Art school taught me everything had to be serious, and I'm actively trying to unlearn that at this point in my life, and just create for me. But yeah, I hope that this is helpful for someone out there. Like, get out a freaking piece of paper, get out a paintbrush, and just make something. Art is about expressing yourself, and it doesn't have to be any more than that if you don't want it to be. If it does become something else, you know, that's cool, but even I came across a Rick Rubin quote. Maybe I'll put it up on the screen here because I'm not gonna get it exactly right, but it's like he doesn't even think about the audience. Like, the point is to make it for you, and if the audience likes it, cool. If not, that wasn't the point. So, yeah, that's basically it. I'm sending you all the good vibes. Go make something today.